I got a new cargo bike just a few weeks ago. It was a decision long in the making, and in this video I'll tell you all the different variables you need to consider and everything you should know, again, when it comes to buying a new cargo bike. Also to see whether it's a good fit for you as an expat living in a city like Copenhagen. If you're new here, my name is Mario, and on this channel I help expats in Denmark and sometimes as well on making great financial decisions in Denmark. Again, as for example, can be buying a cargo bike. So what is a cargo bike? If you live in Copenhagen or in Amsterdam, you must have seen a cargo bike before, which in essence are like bikes that have a big box type of thing in the front, and in the box you normally can sit at least 2 children, sometimes more. You can also use it to carry stuff, like again in a cargo piece of the cargo bike thing. Sometimes you can also have the bike that carries children and things as well. The most common of these bikes have 2 wheels up front, so at either side of the box, and 1 in the back. But there are also versions of this bike where you have just 1 wheel in the front, 1 wheel in the back, and some kind of bullet style in the middle box. I mean, that also exists as well. And then there are the details, right? So you always have a box, but then what is the material this box is made up from? Most of the times it's wood, but sometimes you have it in other materials or in composites. At the same time, you can have different colors of the box. You sometimes have a bigger box, a smaller box that can take 4 kids, or it can take 2 kids. You have electric bike, the electric version of these bikes. You have the non-electric version of these bikes, rain covers, you name it. So there's multiple options out there, so definitely you can check them all out as well. But now let's go through the pros and cons. Why would you consider buying one of these cargo bikes? Number 1 is convenience. So if you live in the city and have kids, this is one of the most, if not the most convenient way to move around the city. It kind of removes or minimizes the need for you to have a car in the city. So again, for car commutes, and this is especially the case when you have more than 1 kid. Kids are kind of the most common use case for cargo bikes, especially if you want to take them to daycare or kindergarten, and then for little tours around the city, that's usually the most common case. In our case, we walk to the kindergarten because it's really close to us, but we have been using the bike to go to places like Tivoli, to the aquarium, to Torvehallen. Super convenient. Number 2 is the carrying capacity. So you can carry up to 3 or 4 people in the box, depending on the bike and depending on the size of the people. And again, this is super convenient because you can take both kids, put them all in the box, and at the same time take 2 of their friends as well, for example. And this is not only, again, as I said, for people. For example, one thing we do ourselves is that we have 2 kids sitting on one side of the bike, and on the other side I just put the stroller, because we have a little like 1-year-old who, when we go to the zoo, for example, we would not be able to carry him all around, or he can walk just a little bit. So I think it's good to have the stroller with us, and then the fact that you can have the 2 kids and the stroller, and then all the food and shenanigans we need to have when we go around with the kids in the same spot in the cargo bike and have them be comfortable. That's great for us. Number 3 is safety. So if you want to move the kids around the city, the cargo bike, like the box feels more substantial, you could say it. It's kind of sturdy and more comfortable riding perhaps than having to have the kid in the seat in the back of your bike, which we also do sometimes. But again, for 2 kids, this is just super much more convenient. And this will not protect you from crashes and the like, but I think like at least having the sturdy box is safer than like a lot of other things besides cars, for instance. Now let's look at the cons. Number 1 is price. So these bikes are pricey. If you want to get an electric cargo bike, you're talking about a price of at least 20 to 30,000, like minimum if new. We paid almost 30,000, and that, I mean, that is serious money for a bicycle. We got these Babboe bikes, which is kind of mid-range. There's some cheaper versions out there, but the reviews we didn't like resonate so much. And there's some more expensive brands as well, like there are these Butchers and bicycles, which I think cost like almost 50,000 or something like that. I might be getting this wrong, but it looks quite expensive. They look phenomenal though, don't get me wrong. Crucially, if you're lucky, you can get a good deal on a second-hand bike. We looked for a month or so and we couldn't find one that we say, okay, this is good price, good condition as well, and so on. But we know of friends that actually did get a really good deal for a second-hand bike. And if that's the case for you, no, definitely you should go for it as well. The second con is maintenance. I'm a zero when it comes to maintaining a bicycle or maintaining a house for that matter. And this is really even harder with the cargo bike. But first you need to do maintenance at least once a year, and that means of course higher costs because you need to pay someone to do the maintenance. And if something breaks on these bikes, it's just a mess. I mean, for me, everything is a mess when the bikes break, but this is especially bad. And then, for example, we got a flat tire on the first week we got this bike. Bad luck, you could say. Normally a flat tire wouldn't be so much of an issue for us because you can just, with a normal bike, just go to any bike shop, they get it fixed, not so complicated. But dragging that big cargo bike around the city to go to a bike shop, it's really complicated, especially since they're so heavy that basically dragging a punctured wheel through the city basically destroys the tire. And that's basically what happened to us. So we now, moving forward, will definitely use this come to home service type of people that help fix things if it breaks again, which I mean at some point it will. Number 3 con is that they get stolen so much. Denmark is safe, but when it comes to bicycles, it's absolutely nuts. They get stolen all the time. I heard stories from friends and colleagues that they had their cargo bikes stolen from their own home's basements, so they had it locked down to something, it didn't matter, they just got stolen. Their batteries broken apart and like wild things like that. If you are planning to get one of these cargo bikes, it helps, or basically it's kind of a necessity, to get a gigantic lock to lock it then to something, like a big chain lock that you can then lock or connect the bike to a big pole that's kind of stuck in the ground. If you're, I mean, I have seen some people that have 2 of those locks. I mean, you just need to be super vigilant because again, these things are very, I mean, they're expensive and you can just take them away, so a lot of them are getting stolen. And also in this context, my recommendation is that you get insurance for the bike. I didn't have a bike insurance before, and bike insurance is expensive, but when you get something again that costs 20,000 plus, it just makes a lot of sense to have that covered. Even if you have like these 2 big chains, the peace of mind that you know that your thing gets stolen and you don't need to put up the 20k from your own pocket again. Even though it's expensive, I do it, and there's a link down in the video description for the company I'm using for insurance in case you need inspiration. So my recommendation is that you shouldn't really be getting a cargo bike if you don't need it. So it's expensive, it's like upfront and then with insurance, the maintenance, and it's only worth, honestly, if you really need it and if you really want to use it and if you would really using it regularly. For instance, we only pulled the trigger on buying this bike when we got the second kid, and the kid is now kind of big enough that he can go inside the bike. Before that, we managed well without it. We had and still have a bike with a child seat on the back, and my big boy was fine there. If you don't have kids, honestly, I wouldn't bother unless you have a specific use case, like you need to carry cargo from one place to the other, for instance. But if you have kids and you want to move around without a car, and especially you want to go as one parent only, because that's kind of crucial, that you can take 2 kids in the bike without having to have 2 parents there, this is great. Personally, I'm very happy with the purchase. We have been using the bike a lot. The kids love it. It's just super convenient. It fulfills our expectations. And before you ask, it's not really that complicated to drive this thing. After 1 week, even less probably, just a few days, I'm like, okay, I get my hang around it. You just need to get used to it and then you're good to go. Last point is that I went with the electric bike option, and I'm glad I did. I never used the electric bike before, but this is just a breeze. I think if you're gonna be taking the kids around the city a lot, or especially on longer tours, this is very convenient. Like else, prepare sometimes for a proper workout, like climbing, like for example, a small hill, like climbing to the zoo that is kind of this hill, or some other parts of the city where you have a little hill. That's gonna be really hard, or you need to have a really good situation on yourself to basically like climb those hills without an electric motor for a big bike like this. In all, I was almost starting to think whether we should get a car in our family or not, but with this we kind of covered for the foreseeable future. If you want to hear more tricks like this on how to save money in Denmark, watch this video over here.